So we're down to what you call the, thank God, it's a Friday, the 17th of January. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Frontier Opening Bell. Let's get the show started with the news coming through that Vista Bank, the commercial bank group operating in mostly French-speaking West and Central Africa, it has opened its first outside Africa branch in France. We will see the number of African banks, financial institutions opening shop in France. Over the last few weeks, we've seen, late last year, we saw Zenith Bank of Nigeria hosting the Zenith Bank's flag in Paris, and that also after Access Bank, another Nigerian with a number of footholds across the African country, also opened a shop in Paris. UBA, which prides itself as the African Global Banks, also announced it's going to open an operational office in France as well. So it looks like France is the place to go right now for African banks. The whole idea is to secure a stronger relationship with France as well as promote trade between the French-speaking Africa and, of course, the France's economy. So this is quite a very big news with Vista Bank opening its first outside African operations in France. So that's the big news. Let's just give you that and take it out of the way. Congratulations, and let's see more of African banks making inroads into the global and international banking and financial services space. Let's look into the markets. 0.09% in the green for the Nigerian market. Equities on Thursday, that was led by industrial goods 1.39%, and the banking sector roughly 0.25%. Dangote Cement shares came back very strongly in the green, 3.12% after a very big sell down that we saw earlier in the week. Jitco shares 1.13% in the green. FBN Holdings, the parent company of First Bank, also saw its shares in the green territory, but those gains were moderated by declines in insurance as well as the oil and gas index down by 2.5% after news was reported that one of the oldest bankers in Nigeria sell down about billions, what about 10 billion local currency of shares in RDL Holdings, which was listed late last year on the Nigerian exchange. So we saw a bit of a pullback in the oil and gas index. Let's just move on to the BRVM, 0.31% for the composite in the green. EGX30 finished the week 0.75%, but failed to get the 30,000 back. The market will resume on Sunday in Cairo. The Nairobi stock market came back much stronger than the previous session, 0.98%, 130.45 for the All-Share Index, while the GSE in South Africa was better by 0.17%, 83,658. As the South African rand also recovered 0.3% to, lost about 0.3% to the US dollar at 1882. Let's just move on and check what else is making the headlines this morning after the Vista Bank story. In Nigeria, the Governors Forum, the governors of the 36 states met yesterday. Well, not exactly all of them, but at least more than a dozen of them were present in Abuja, the political capital, yesterday, meeting with the Tax Reform Presidential Committee, and it was agreed, there was a consensus, a 1.5-page statement which was released, that the VAT will be done at 50% equity, 30% derivation, and 20% based on population. That's the biggest news out of Nigeria yesterday. But starting with East and Central Africa, the World Bank released a new report yesterday, a statement saying that the global economy, the long-term growth, viability of the global economy is looking weak since the start of the century. The World Bank is concerned that the global economy is not moving as fast as possible. Again, we've got a whole lot of headwinds from geopolitics to the war in the Middle East and, of course, the new administration, the outlook on the new administration and transition in the United States to Trump administration in the next few days. The World Economic Forum, of course, in Davos is happening over the next few days as well. Political leaders, policy leaders, and all those businessmen, and all that, the economists will meet together to also discuss the state of the global economy. Keep that in mind. Kenya is looking to impose new sugar levy or development levy starting February. Well, let's see how sweet that will be for those in the business of confectionaries, sugar, and those in the consumer space. The IMF Executive Board is looking to discuss Ethiopia's next disbursement today. Friday, Ethiopia is doing massive reforms across board, including the market, set up a new stock exchange, all in a bid to have that warm handshake with the authorities in Washington, the Bretton Woods institutions. Rwanda has discovered a fresh oil reservoirs in Lake Kivu. Let's see if that is in commercial quantity to get Rwanda into the oil production industry and perhaps join, or will most likely join, the APPO if that comes true. And Gabon has appointed a new finance minister. Nicole Mbo is the new Minister for Finance for the country, and we say congratulations. Gabon is one of the oil-producing economies on the continent. Let me move on to West Africa, with Nigeria's tax reform now being a big issue. So the Presidential Tax Reform Committee will now have the basis to move forward or go back to the National Assembly, as it were, the lower legislative house, the House of Representatives, as it's called, to move for the second reading of the bill. But there are a bit of concerns about the consensus reached yesterday afternoon, whether the deal cut between the governors and the Presidential Tax Reform Committee not to reduce company income tax from 30 to 25% and not to raise VAT from 7.5% to estimated 10% will be in the best interest of our businesses. And again, of course, the good news part of it is that VAT will remain at 7.5% for consumers pressured by the very hard hitting reforms of the Tinubu's administration over the last 18 months. Stanbic IBTC is selling 2.9 billion shares, roughly 3 billion, rights issue at 50 naira 50 kobo per share. That's already opened on Thursday. Will be ending on February the 21st. The idea is to meet the new level of banking sector regulatory capital. The deadline for all the banks in Nigeria is April 2026. Keep that in mind. NESE, over-the-counter securities exchange, issued notice yesterday that it's admitted the entire shares of Great Nigeria Insurance PLC, one of the oldest indigenous Nigerian insurer. We'll keep that track of that for you. And mining companies in West Africa are turning to arbitration due to disputes. You've heard about the whole Barrick Gold dispute in Mali with the military junta sealing off the minings and seizing gold and all of that. So it looks like there's a lot of trouble for the mining sector in West Africa, at least for those countries within the Sahel region, part of the Chad, Mali, and Niger Republic. Keep an eye on that. It's all in the mining news all over the place. Let's move on to Southern Africa. The government in South Africa, government of President Ramaphosa, is in talks with the GSE, that's the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, to get some of those struggling SOEs, South African Airways, Transnet Holdings, and a few others to be listed on the exchange and just get off the back of the government, subsidizing them moving forward. Let's see how that happens. And the Delta sad news from the South African mine siege has now risen to 78. Total rescued is 166. And it looks like, unfortunately, the rest of the miners on the ground may not be rescued. But hope is still being kept, heart and mind, with the families of those who lost their lives at the mines there. And corporate news, SPAR is selling its head office in South Africa and other assets to pay down its 9 billion rand debts after those fortunate investments that the company did over the few years. Car makers are begging ArcelorMittal to delay South Africa's mill closures in order to find alternatives to the resources that they pick up from ArcelorMittal, as it were. PPC Limited is looking to build a new cement plant, $160 million in Cape Province in South Africa, while Tonga Hewlett of Zimbabwe says it's going to lay off 1,000 workers because of the country's FX liquidity crisis. Those are your headlines this Friday from Southern Africa. Finish it up with me in North Africa, where Martinet and GTCI is looking to invest about 263 million Egyptian pounds in the Taj City infrastructure, while the Egypt CIB Bank says it's completed 1.8 billion local currency securitization transaction for GB leasing. And Libya's total hydrocarbon production is now up to 1.6 million barrels per day. The initial outlook was for 1.4 million barrels per day. Now that's been crossed. Tunisia's budget deficit at about 2.9 billion dinars in November. That's according to the latest from the North African economy. And finally, the AU has adopted a new agriculture strategy to raise agro-food production output by 45% on the African continent by the year 2025. Those are your headlines at this time. Do have a very great day and enjoy the rest of the weekend, everyone. Let's get back together on Monday for the next Frontier Opening Bell. Bye for now.